And we're live. Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one Lord, Amen. Hi guys, welcome back to Friday meeting. Welcome back to the table. Um, so we've been doing this now for a couple of weeks. The idea of the table is that we all miss being around each other, just chilling over a meal and just chit-chatting and talking about topics of substance. So, we've thought of a couple of topics that we felt were quite important to all of us, and we're just going to chat. It's going to be basically like a live podcast for you to enjoy. So if you're sitting and watching your laptop, if you're making a hot chocolate, if you're planning your COVID outfits for your cat, then enjoy our conversation. So today we've got, when I say your name, say hi and something, an interesting fact about yourself. So we've got Michael Moad. Whoop, whoop.
Hey guys, Michael Moad. Interesting fact, Emma just changed my name to Michael Mo. So confusion, that's what's going on.
You've got my beautiful wife, Sandra.
Hello. Interesting fact is this is how I like to sit in my bed with a box of biscuits.
And the ever shining, ever Daya, ever getting lost, Miriam.
Well, I always use the same fact, and now mine's so boring in comparison. I know you guys will know it, but I have a twin. But anyway, that's the coolest I have right now.
Okay. And I am Michael. Love you all. And my interesting fact is I've been researching pet dogs recently. So that's been quite interesting and really fun. So pray for us. Okay, so today's topic is going to be about failure. We had a couple of like social topics recently. So we tackled relationships and dating. We talked about friendship, and then we just felt like we wanted to talk about something that will resonate with everyone and something that we've probably all gone through before. So without further ado, to our table today, what does it mean to fail to you? How would you define failure? Welcome, Randush. Welcome, Damiana. We're talking about failure. And I've just asked the guys, what does it mean to fail? What's your definition of it? Start us off, Miriam.
Okay. Is my mute off? Okay. To fail. What does it mean to fail? To me, to fail is to not meet an expectation that either I've set for myself or the world has set for me or in general. But yeah, when I don't reach something like an expectation, that is my definition of failure. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree, and the fact that I like the way that you described the expectations, because failure in my mind is not like a set in stone thing. Failure can look really different from one person to the other. So it could be someone's biggest failure in life not to get into that first choice uni, but then for someone else it could be like, yeah, whatever, not that big of a deal. So I definitely think failure is a very variable term. It definitely depends on like where we kind of put those expectations.
Yeah, I agree.
I think for the longest time, I probably defined it the same as you, Miriam. I definitely thought of failure as like either like falling short of the expectations that I put on myself or the expectations that like my family has of me or my friends or whatever. I think for me now, failure, true failure is not trying and not making any effort to get out of the slump that I'm in. Once you've given up, to me, that's the truest definition of failure.
That's really interesting because some like when you think of it, I've never thought of it like like the action of not actually trying to get up. I've only thought of it of the consequence of not meeting an expectation or something like that. So I've never thought of it as a like an ongoing thing that I can choose for myself.
There is actually one of my favorite quotes is by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's kind of says exactly what you kind of just raised, Michael. So the quote goes, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of the deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory or defeat." So that's it's a, I think, quite powerful image of actually the one who's failing is the one who's failing is the one who's standing on the outside and pointing out other people's failures, or who's too scared to actually try, and they're the cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. But the man in the arena may look like he's failing, but because he's actually in the arena and he's fighting, and
he's doing something.
Exactly, he's not failing. And even when he fails, he's doing it while daring greatly, which is the main thing.
Yeah, I like that. It kind of just frames failure as a mindset more than anything, you know. And yeah, I kind of like what you mentioned, Mike, about it. Your definition kind of transitioning from like expectations to not even trying, because there's like this saying that someone said to me like a couple of years ago, and it was just a game changer. It was just like, regret is more painful than rejection. You know, like the regret of not going for that job or going for that opportunity is more painful than actually going for it and then getting that rejection. Yeah, I really like what you guys have said.
By the way, to everyone listening, please feel free as we're talking to chip in and like say your comments or send us your questions so we can discuss them as well. So we want you to feel like you're a part of the conversation as well. Go on, Miriam.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so seeing as we have had a couple of questions, I'm gonna ask this one. So what do you guys think of this? When have we felt like failures in our lives, and what spurred this on? So maybe one of you guys want to share. Yeah. When have you guys felt like failures, and what spurred it on?
I think for it sounds like we're kind of repeating ourselves, but I think personally, the times that I felt that failure is when I've decided my future for myself, or like I've created or imagined that future for myself. And something that I've noticed is the more emotionally invested I have, I've become in a future that I made for myself. That, you know, like a future that I didn't even give God the chance to come in and just decide for myself. The more emotionally invested I'm in that, when that doesn't get fulfilled, then I feel that failure, as opposed to kind of just letting go, surrendering it. So yeah, quick answer to that question. For me personally, is when I emotionally invest too much into something that maybe shouldn't be, you know, that important.
I feel like honestly at this point in my life, I'm probably like the poster child for failure. Like honestly, like I really, really feel like it's like my journey with God and like failure in my life have been literally like so deeply intertwined. It's a core part of who I am now. So the questions, when have we felt like failures? Oh God. When I was in A levels, I applied for dentistry and I didn't get the results that I needed to get into uni. So that was the first time in my life that I properly felt like a failure. I had to go through clearing to get into uni, and I felt very like confused. I'd never like experienced the sting of failure until then. Um, my uni journey was very, very turbulent as well. Like I was depressed for the majority of it, and I hated my course so much, and it made me feel like an absolute failure because I kept failing all my exams. I repeated at least like 2 or 3 years. I honestly can't remember. I blacked out that whole like time at uni. Um, and then even after uni, I think starting my first job, I remember like my first job that I was excited about, and it was going to be like a corporate job, and I'm stepping away from like my uni course and whatever. Um, and then I left it a couple of months after because of how horrible I found like the culture at the office. And I felt like an absolute failure again because I was just like, every time I try it, I literally don't even go back to square zero. I'm back at like -10. Um, so yeah, for me, definitely the biggest times in my life where I felt like a failure have always had to do with academia or career. And exactly like what we were saying before, it's always come back to having an expectation of myself and feeling like it's not that I'm not meeting it, I'm literally like 10,000 miles away from it and feeling like it couldn't be further from where I want to be.
What's interesting as well is that we can feel like quite a lot of pain for expectations that other people have placed on our lives. Because what you said, Mike, yeah, it's definitely hit a chord. And I'd find myself like feeling like pain for, you know, things that I didn't even really care about, but, you know, in our culture is super important because definitely, like, if I'm being completely honest, did not love my course as well. And it's kind of funny, isn't it? I don't know. What about Sandra, Miriam? Also, like as well, kind of like how did that failure kind of affect us? Like, what did we? I don't know. You know, I guess like how did we really carry ourselves in those kind of moments of failure, so to speak, as well?
I feel like I've had really big moments of failure. Just like Michael was saying, I went through a very, very similar situation where I was actually, so I'm a pharmacist, but before pharmacy school, I was actually studying medicine at King's, but I never made it through because I just really, really struggled to pass the exams. So that was definitely one of probably like the most, I would say, kind of life like groundbreaking moments of feeling like rock bottom, like one of the biggest moments of my life where I felt that. But I feel like there's also like failures that we go through. Like you cannot escape failure if you're trying to live like a life that is not reserved, a life that is just even being creative, trying to be innovative, trying to be open, trying to be vulnerable. Even like in any time you're going to try to do anything new, there's always going to be like a risk of failure and a very high possibility of failure. I feel like a lot of the times just on this journey of like engagement and marriage, there's been many days where it's just felt like, wow, I'm like really failing at this. I don't know what to do. Even like I know what the right thing to do is, but I'm just unable to do it. Like St. Paul says, like that which I want to do, I do not do, and that which I do not want to do, I do. Um, and I feel like for me, like getting through that failure has always, first and foremost, kind of always comes back to like acknowledging that failure is only failure if it stops there. It's all about my response. If I respond to failure by seeing it as a lesson, by seeing it maybe as a wake-up call, by seeing it as some sort of awakening that I need to run to God, I need to cling to God, I need to plead before God my cause, my pain, my whatever it is that I'm feeling, then the failure, it stops becoming failure and it starts becoming growth, and it starts becoming like actually a source of life and a source of beauty. And I think, yeah, it's just really believing and living in that truth that neither all of my success and all of my failure is working together in a positive way, guided by my God and my Savior. And I think that has to be like the core foundation, and that has always been, like, for me, the only thing that can even begin to give me a bit of like just like ability or energy to begin to work through like my failure. And then I think there's like all the like negativity, like first of all, it's almost like accepting the fact that you failed, or accepting the fact that I've not good enough, or I've screwed up at this. And then it's working through all of that feeling and all of that kind of emotion that comes with it. And I think like we go to God in prayer, but for me, what I've also found like really helps is actually having a trusted friend or a trusted person that I can open up to and be vulnerable with, and like say, you know, like I'm sad, or I'm feeling shame, or just to open up to them and to help them explore my emotions with me, to help them explore like all these unspoken, like that hurt or that sadness or that whatever, like that feeling of like I've screwed up and I feel small, or I feel not good enough, or I feel weak. And then to have like that person to like speak truth over me, to have that person pray for me, I think that's always been something that's like very powerful on my path to learning from my failure, to growing from my failure. And because I think we all essentially know that failure isn't bad. Failure is a very good thing. Failure is like, we probably learn more from our failure than we learn from our success. But it's like actually when it happens to us, that's never like where we're at mentally. I feel like we're like, shouldn't have happened. Why did I allow this to happen? How could I have stopped this? You know, what did I do wrong? Let me go back. Let me like agonize over every tiny detail and like try to almost like just figure out what on earth I did wrong, or how on earth I messed up, and trying to almost like rewrite that story. But I think, yeah, it's just like that is like something we need to keep taking to God in prayer. And also I believe like help, like having that help from someone that we trust in our life to actually show us, like to help us overcome that mistake, and to show us that actually no, we're more wise because of this, like we're going to have a more wholehearted life because of this, and to help us like rewrite that narrative that we're saying in our head, like, no, you're not a screw up. Maybe you screwed up, but you're not a screw up. And I think that's like that shift in identity is like what's so important.
You have to be so careful with like the stories you tell yourself, or the language you use with yourself as well. Like exactly like you said, that snippet that you said, like, no, I'm not a screw up. I screwed up, but I'm not a screw up. Because I think we walk away from a situation, and the longer we are, the longer it's been since that situation happened, or since that failure, or since that kind of whatever rejection on a job, or like an awful interview, whatever it is, the longer we are from that, the less reliable our memories become, because we've kind of filled in the gaps with sometimes really painful stories about how we're not good enough, which is like super far from the truth. Like we really don't know. We don't know what the reason is. We didn't succeed in this particular place, and we also don't know God's work yet. Once we're able to define God, he ceases to be God. So it's like this kind of step that we have to take, like a counterintuitive step of literally not doing anything and just surrendering it to him, all the while kind of just making sure we don't, like you said, say all that kind of negative talk to ourselves.
Yeah, and everybody, I feel like, without realizing it, is telling themselves a story about themselves at all times. And that story is like, you know, at any point, like things can enter in that can be total lies. It could be, like you said, like somebody's words over me, or something that I've seen, or something that I've heard, or like media, or like it could be so many things that are feeding into like our stories. And I it's I think moving past failure needs so much courage, needs so much bravery, because you need to be self-aware, you need to be honest, you need to like realize sometimes, actually no, it's I'm choosing the easy way out by accepting my failure, or feeling like a failure, or like losing myself to these emotions of failure. But actually, like, no, I am telling myself a lie, and I need to move away from either glossing over my pain or numbing my pain, to actually really, really sit with myself, sit with my God, sit with my people, and ask myself, how do I feel? How do I think? How is it affecting me? And to like get to that root of like all those falsehoods or those lies, and to like be able to just have God like baptize it with His mercy and with His grace. So my
I like that point, because I feel like when we talk about failure, it's very, very easy to romanticize it when you're not currently failing. It's very, very, very easy for us, like in a casual Friday meeting, to chat about like, oh, failure is the best, and failure helps me to grow, and failure is like, if you Google failure, even all the quotes that you see in like Forbes and all, like all those images are always like, failure is the same road as success, but success is like down the line, and all this truthful, lovely stuff. But the reality of failure is what you just said, babe. Like, the reality is like, it's painful. It's painful. And no matter how, I think, often you fail, it doesn't, I think it doesn't get less, it doesn't become less of a shock to the system. I think maybe with time, we just see how good God is. So we learn like that your goodness remains constant. But I think what we always need to be like, what we need to communicate to ourselves is like, no, this is hard. What I'm going through right now is hard. I I'm very, very, very like in my rights to to kick and scream and shout and be disappointed. It's completely normal for me, like in my failure, to feel like I'm depressed, to feel like I'm in like a tunnel of absolute darkness, and I can't see any light anywhere in front of me, because that's what failure does. Like, that's what failure feels like. I think I don't know. I think it's very, very, when we talk about failure, we have to acknowledge its emotional impact on us, as well as how God works in it through us. But it does take a toll on us. And I think that's why so many of us feel passionately when we talk about failure, because of how much of a toll it's taken on us. It takes so much from you. But I think when you submit it to God, what you end up finding, which is what we'll probably discuss later on, is the rewards of it are incredible, because of what you get to know about God Himself. But it does take so much of you. And I'm actually curious to like get you guys to be raw and vulnerable and share how, like, what's failure in your life driven you to? Like, how have you felt failure? Because I think people need to hear that. I think we need to be honest about that. Girls, you can't sit muting yourselves. Unmute yourselves.
I only do it just in case this but I think like, to be completely truthful, it's honestly what you've just said, Michael. The truth of failure is that it's hard, and that it's painful, and that it's something that, like, it doesn't just finish in one day or something, like, sorry, every day you think about it, you think, and it puts a toll on you, because you think, oh, I did this, or I wasn't never good enough, or this was all my fault, or all of this, and then I think, like, the constant thoughts in your mind, like, start to affect you in a way that, sometimes, to me, seems supernatural. When I'm in it, I'm like, this is crazy, like, I never thought I could ever feel like this, or something like this. So no, I definitely think that failure is something that hits you, like, real hard, like, um um yeah. So if that is if I don't think anyone who has experienced failure has walked through it like a, you know, like a butterfly, like and it's been easy. Like I even think the saints and the people in the Bible and the people who were spoken of, they faced failure, loads of them, but you know, I'm sure they admitted that it was hard, that the chains were heavy, and that you know, the whips were super sharp on them. So the truth about failure is exactly what you said. It's painful and it hurts. But it's about, you know, what comes next. You know, personally for me, I never used to deal with failure well ever, like since I was young. But I think God knew that, so then he in a way he sends more failure, and he tries to to change, you know, where we're looking. Instead of I failed, I did this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy or anything, he changed it to it's not, it's not you that's it's you're not like, how can I put this, like he changes your mindset to to not make it about me, which is really difficult because in the failure I'm losing, and like I'm the one that's in pain, kind of thing. So all you can think about is yourself. So definitely, like for me, um like across the years, I think it's the changing or the renewing of the mind that Christ gives, in the fact that, okay, yeah, you failed at this, but maybe because I have something different for you, maybe because I have a different path for you, maybe because I have a different a friend told me basket for you or something like that. So we see, you know, we see failure, but God sees shaping, he sees redirection, he sees um, sharpening, like the person. So like, yeah, the failure is probably the worst things that you could probably experience in the midst of it. Um, but definitely just just through scripture and through prayer and through Christ, just through him, you realize that that failure was important, like that was needed in my life. Because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here. Or if I didn't fail in this, then I wouldn't have this, like loads of things. I don't know. Sorry, I talk a lot.
So, following on from your point, Miriam, what would you guys say are the positive things that you have gotten out of failure? And what major lessons do you feel like failure has taught you?
Definitely think it makes you stronger, like in so many ways. Like I think I don't know, like I used to be really, really shy when I was young, and like I wouldn't go out, like, and whatever it may be, like I find it really difficult to express myself like publicly or something like that. So I'd think of myself as being a failure. So like a couple of instances happen, and you're like, um, this is embarrassing, or you know, something like that, something embarrassing happens, and then in the moment you're like, this is the worst thing ever, get me out of here. But then later you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, oh, I can do this again. So like, yeah.
So it started building resilience in you.
Yeah, definitely.
I had to think about this question earlier because I think I'm not like a regretful person. I don't believe in like ever looking back and regretting anything. So to me, I have to find purpose and I have to find the lesson behind my failures in my life, which have been many, 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 many failures. And I kind of narrowed it down to three things. So I'll share that with you guys. One, like the main one for me, like the main huge lesson that failure taught me was the power of hope. Um, I think hope is like this really, really, really strong word in the Bible that we use very like casually in our day-to-day lives, so we don't understand like how strong and how like mighty hope is. And the best way that I can explain it is for me, at a stage in my life, especially at uni, towards like the final years when I was so desperate to graduate just so I can get out of it, but I didn't have the physical energy, I didn't have the mental energy, I was way too depressed, everything, I just given up completely. And to me, hope is when you feel like everywhere around you is like pitch black, but you cry out to God and He gives you the belief that even though you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, there is a light. I can't see it, I can't feel it, there isn't like a glimmer of light at all, but I'm trusting in the hope that I have in Him. And one like huge life verse that God gave me in that season of my life was Psalm 25, verse 3. And it says, "He who hopes in you will never be put to shame." And to me, that's been like a cornerstone like verse in my life. Like anytime I feel like a failure, anytime I feel like khalas, like I've reached rock bottom, I remember that verse and in my mind, I'm like, it's okay, just hope. I don't need to have the answers. I don't need to have the energy. I don't need to be out of my depression. All that's required of me right now is to cling on to you, and you will give me the hope that I need to have. The other two things that I think failure really like taught me, and honestly, I'm I'm kind of thankful for those experience. No, not kind of. I'm very, very, very thankful for those experiences because they've shaped me, and now this is who I've become. Failure taught me to like really, really, really enjoy my nothingness. And I'll explain to you what I mean. I feel like failure, when you reach rock bottom, either you can like continue to allow yourself to go through like emotional turmoil by like almost like beating yourself to death. Like, how can I be down here? I don't deserve to be down here. I expected more of myself, and just like beating yourself up about it. Or you can just like submit to God and be like, you know what? I'm rubbish. I am in every sense of the word. I'm rubbish in my relationship. I'm rubbish in my friendships. I'm rubbish in my career. I'm just I don't know anything. I don't know how to do it well. And no matter how much I try, it's not going to be that great. And I'm not saying this in like a weird, sadistic, depressed way, because I think when we acknowledge that, like, I know I'm nothing, like I'm wala haga, and then I cling onto God so I can be anything, then my failure becomes His problem. So I no longer need to carry that weight on my shoulder. Yeah, I failed, and yeah, it's a huge issue, and maybe I didn't submit like my assignment in time, or I completely like am failing at my job or whatever. But at the end of the day, if I recognize that I can't do anything about it because I'm rubbish, but you are everything and you are capable, then I can give it to Him, and it can become His responsibility and his issue to own. Um, I'm talking a lot, but like my last point as well that I think a lot of us actually experience when it comes to failure is usually like, unfortunately, we all turn to God a bit more when we go through difficult times in life. And I think failure is one of those prime examples where almost like exam mode spirituality gets activated, and I'm stressed and I'm sad and I'm cornered. So all of a sudden I turn to God. And I think what that taught me is like there's like almost a beauty to those painful times. So in a strange way now in my life, when I fail or when I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed and everything's piling up and it's getting too much, I might be freaking out, but there's this small, very like secluded part of my heart that's actually like kind of excited and happy because I know in the depth of my heart that, yay, this is an excuse. I'm actually going to get closer to my God, and I miss Him. I haven't clung on to Him the way that I should be in the happy times. So this is actually going to activate something in me that hasn't been there for a while. So yeah, to me, those were like the three main lessons that I'd say failure's definitely taught me.
I have never seen it like that, but I absolutely love just what you, the last point about like you actually being excited like through your failure, that you're gonna sit with Christ.
No, I'm not excited about the failure.
Oh.
I'm excited that I feel like a season is coming when I'm gonna get close to God. Don't get me wrong, I hate failure.
Yeah, no,
It's still a struggle.
Yeah, I know, but I guess that gave you comfort, like while you're in your failure. That, hold on a minute, my light is actually that I'm actually going to spend time with him, or I'm going to have a closer season, because like you said, after you know, through every dark tunnel there is a light. So I like that.
I completely agree with all of the points, Michael. I feel like I experienced that as well. Like, definitely there's so much humility that comes from failing. And like, for me, because all like throughout my childhood and adolescence, like being like the smartest person and getting into the, like being at the top of my class and knowing that if I try hard, I'll get exactly like what I want. Like, that was like almost so much my identity that it like was seeping into every part of my life. Like, even my relationship with God, like to me, it was like, you know, I don't need grace. I'm great. I'm a good girl. Like, I don't struggle with the same things everybody struggles in. And then all of a sudden you start failing. You, like, for me, failing at university was like, what, like I've never like failed at an exam. How is this happening? Failing in my walk with God and like making like really bad decisions and making really bad mistakes, and even failing like by like having like, you know, relationships that weren't appropriate, that weren't right, like, and just realizing I'm doing all of these things I never thought I'd do. I'm like this person that I don't even recognize. That just brings like such a sense of humility. And then when you have that humility, like the beauty of it is like the detachment that comes from humility. And by detachment, I mean like all of these things that I thought were so necessary to be me, all of these things that I like associated with like Sandra and my identity, like actually realizing when all of the things like that are temporal are lost, like that doesn't mean like I am lost. That doesn't, because temporal losses are not spiritual losses, and trouble or sin or pain or sickness or sadness and failure, they're actually just like God's language and secret code of like, this is the beginning of your resurrection. This is your death will lead to resurrection. Your tears will bring joy. Your ashes will bring beauty. And that's the language of the kingdom. Like, there always has to be death for there to be rebirth. And sometimes that death looks like failure or is failure. And we have to experience that. We have to go through that in order to like experience the fullness of his joy and eternal glory, like if we're walking through that with him. And that detachment is like everything, because that's when you realize like, yeah, I'm just a sojourner. I'm just passing by. This isn't my home. And therefore I have nothing, there's no loss that I have to fear, because I will never lose you, God. Because I've lost, like, even after losing the things that I never thought I could ever lose, and realizing I'm okay. I'm actually okay. Like, that's such a freeing thing.
One of the verses that like really came to me when I was preparing is John 12:24, and it says, "Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." So I just think that's in line with what you're saying about detachment and the dying to self. Like, the more that we experience failure and that part of like our pride dies, the more that it actually bears fruit to a lot more that we didn't even realize could be in us.
I want to share something that I read recently, because it kind of like completely reframed everything, and it's like kind of talks about this idea, like you kind of touched on, Sandra, of kind of not looking at ourselves, not looking at these situations with judgment. And it kind of also touched on pretty much what everyone was saying, but I really liked it because it kind of shows that like if we're children of God, then we're definitely going to fail. It's almost kind of guaranteed. If anything, like he wants us to fail. So it's Hebrews 11 and Hebrews 12. It's just like the whole chapter pretty much. And it says, "My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens and scourges every son whom he receives." And in that same kind of chapter, he talks about like, if a father doesn't care about his son, don't worry, he's not going to chasten him, he's not going to scourge him, he's not going to put him through any tough trials or anything like that. And yeah, I guess that kind of image, like, those, yeah, I'm kind of digressing a bit, but those movies like where the coach is super, super harsh on the athlete and he's like, I don't care what I told the other guys to do. I'm telling you to run 20 miles. I don't care if they're running 10. And at the time, the person or the athlete or whoever just thinks like, wow, this guy's being so incredibly harsh to me. And then at the end of the movie, like he runs the full however many yards. And yeah, like when I was reading that, I was like, wow, okay, so I'm being chastened, I'm being scourged, actually because of how much he loves me. Like it's not any other reason. He's doing this because he loves me and he wants to see me grow. He wants to see all those worldly qualities that I've clung onto so hard die, so that there's space for all the kind of godly characteristics to grow, so that we can kind of just keep chasing him and for our character to look more like him instead of what we thought we should always have, chased after.
Actually, Michael, before that verse that you read in chapter 12 is chapter 11, obviously, which has like all of the men of faith. And it goes through like, I just got it up quickly, and it talks about like Moses and Noah and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and it talks about like by faith like they did this, and by faith they did like, and then it says this verse, and it says whose weakness was turned to strength. And all of those people, like Miriam, you said at the beginning, at one point, if you like honed in and like took like probably a snapshot of their life, like 9 times out of 10, they probably would have looked like a bit of a flop, like because it was like, other than I feel like Joshua, everybody's like all these great men of faith who've done great things. Like there was so much like trial, there was so much failure, there was so much just like coming before God, interceding and crying out, and really just like that is like their life now as we see it is like looks like success, but like it was like completely marked by failure at every stage.
Yeah, and what's funny, like the thing that they all had in common obviously is faith, but like the beginning of that chapter 11, it's like that verse, and it says, now faith is a substance of things hoped for. So like we're talking about hope like as if it's just like a novelty, or like, yeah, you should just hope. No, like hope is essential to our faith. Like we can't be good Christians without hope. It's a requirement for our faith. So yeah.
And I really like the point that you raised, Michael, that God loves us enough to allow us to fail. I think once that switch is like once we've made that switch in our minds, we live our lives so differently, because I'm not trying to live my life trying to avoid failure anymore. Khalas, I've just accepted that like every time it happens, I grow. Every time it happens, I depend on God more. Every time it happens, I break my pride and I tap into like all of these things that we're talking about. Like I begin to learn to hope. My faith increases. I see so many more virtues. I become desperate for His presence in my life. Like I end up serving other people because I can now relate to them, and I'm someone who's experienced pain, so I can talk about pain. Like I think there's a stage in everyone's life where you have to make a conscious choice to no longer try to stop fighting failure. Like, just lean into it. Just accept, like, we are all failures. We are all hot messes, and we will continue to be hot messes until the day we die. But like, glory be to God that he always, like you guys think, he always turns it around, and he always makes it into something that we look back to as a pillar of growth and a point of growth. And I think that's something that we have to train ourselves to do, because it doesn't come naturally. I'm never going to wake up and be okay with the idea of being less than what I want to be, less than what people expect me to be. But it comes with training. It comes with the breaking of the self with time, until one day you wake up and you say to yourself, you know what? Whether I'm rising or falling, in you, I am successful. I remember one quote that really, really, really resonated with me. A close friend of mine said it to me once, and they said, Jesus was as much of a success when he was risen as he was on the cross. We never, ever, ever look at Jesus on the cross and say he's a failure. Actually, we wear like the cross on our necks as a sign of life, as a sign of success. So if our own God was like at the height of his success on the cross, as well as in the resurrection, why do I look at different chapters of my life and tell myself, here I'm a failure, but here I am successful? No, you're successful. You are God's child. That is successful. That is what success means. Like, success isn't a thing that you get. Success is your identity. And then that frees us. Then we're not so afraid of fear, because I recognize I'm success. No matter what, I'm successful. I'm a garbage person, and as Bela, but I am successful in him. And no matter how much I fall, I will always stay successful. Sorry, I'm getting very, very wound up, because it's taken me years to be able to like say this and actually mean it. Like, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking. Someone else ask a question.
I want to go like further, and like what you guys are saying is that like God allows us to fail, but I feel like more than that, God like wants us to be acutely aware of our failing and our failures. Like in the story of the Samaritan woman, when he meets her at the well, and he doesn't like he's so explicit, and he wants her, he asks her about her personal life, and she's like kind of stuttering a half confession of like, oh, like my husband's, but like he wants to put his finger on the wound, and he wants to incise it, and he wants that dialogue. He wants us to be confronted with the true state of ourselves, and like, and the secret parts of ourselves as well. He doesn't just want, he wants to go deep with us. And like that storm of failure like is not the thing that's ever gonna make like it's never going to be the thing that condemns us. If anything, like it's the very thing that leads us to the heart of God, and is the very thing that like makes us like actually candidates for his salvation and for his grace. And yeah, and like failure may batter us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but like when we like what failure over, especially over time and time again, like reveals to us is like the goodness and the greatness and the mightiness and like the amazingness of our God, that in the midst of our failure, like Jesus is present in the midst of our failure. He is helping us rise above them, and he's like saying to us, like he said to his disciples, like take heart, like I am with you, I will be with you until the end. And that is kind of all we need to not be defeated, to not to like to live that victorious life. That even in the midst of the fight, even in the midst of my sin, even in the midst of, you know, my self-inflicted failure sometimes, like, you know, or the failure that like just falls, like we don't even understand like why it happened to us, or how like I went like like my life ended up this way, or this part of my life like looks like this. Like even in those like most broken parts of our life, like he's with us, and he's there to he's there to remind us that like no, like this will not have the last word on you.
I really like what you said about partials as well. Like partial, like I don't think God wants us to come to him partially, like whether that's a partial confession, a partial repentance, or a partial surrender. It's like God can only help us as much as we surrender to him. And it's kind of funny, it's like the moment we stop failing usually comes at the same moment where we surrender everything, or we confess everything, or we literally just, yeah, like expose everything. So I definitely like what you said. No partials, like just gotta go all in.
Yeah, and we need to pray like that God can make us, or that the Holy Spirit can help us be open, can help us be vulnerable, because I feel like that's really like the biggest like roadblock, like when it comes to like not like when it comes to like not being stuck and paralyzed and crippled by our failure. It's like it's that taking that step of like, no, it's safe for me to like to show God like just how bad I am, or it's safe to like to run to him with this problem that I don't see how he could ever solve. Like I don't see how he could like make this part of my life okay again. Like honestly, like when I like got essentially kicked out of university, I had no idea how anything was going to be okay again. Like, because in my head I was like, this is how, like, this is not a spiritual problem. This is a very worldly problem. Like, how are you, like, or are you just going to create like a degree for me, Lord? Like, no, of course not. But like, and I had to reapply for pharmacy, and every single university basically rejected me because they said you didn't finish medicine. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be on the street. Like, that's it. Like, I can pray all day long. It's not going to change anything. Like, I got kicked out of university.
You can be the Egyptian lady with Biadora.
Yeah, literally. I was, and everyone's like, just pray, just trust God. And I'm like, how on earth is he gonna fix this? And like by a miracle, like the one university, which was the best one for me, gave me an acceptance and didn't have any issue with the fact that I had failed at medicine, which was UCL, and it was like the best one I had applied to. And it was like, oh my gosh, okay, like, no, God, you really make a way when there is no way, and you are with me. You are not just with me like spiritually, but you're not like some like powerless like God who's just there to like make me holy. Like, no, like you care, you're involved, you're living and you're active, and you're like moving mountains for me. Like, it was crazy.
You know, you just reminded me of like this. I watched this sermon a really long time ago. I was trying to understand it. It was in Arabic though, so but you're right about everything you said. And like Abuna Dawood, he was literally saying like, your father is rich. Like he's rich beyond like you can ever imagine. Like, and he's, you know, the owner of all things, the creator of all things in the whole world. Like, do you think that he can't give you the thing that you want right now? Like, do you think he can't? Because he can. But like, I think the beauty of this is that he has something so much nicer, so much better, like so much sweeter than you can ever imagine. That yes, I know you want that, and by the way, God can give that to you, yani, in a click of his fingers, in like a blink. But you know, he said, I don't want you in this university right now, because I want you to do something else. I want you to do something else, something greater, with the failure that you may feel in that moment. Because I have something, you know, like I always go back to this picture.
She had to fail because I failed after her, like literally the year after, and she was the one that helped me through it. You made her fail for me.
Exactly, that's so right. Like that's I'm sorry, that's a testimony in itself that you failed, and Michael actually had in a sense comfort in something that you might have said. You know,
I don't remember this at all, by the way. Like, this is all Michael's like storytelling. This is the story he tells himself.
But it's sweet because he does. You see, that's the point.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's like, and yeah, like you don't even realize how God is like working like in your story to like to heal like other people's stories, like in the body.
Mm.
Yeah.
So guys, just so we don't like get too long, let's all like summarize like the main point that you want people listening in to remember about failure. Go, Michael, start us off.
Okay. The main point about failure. You know what? I'm gonna add a point. I'm not gonna, because I can't. I've got a very bad memory, so I can't remember what I said. But another point on top of kind of what you guys said as well. God is always present. I know that's like a very on the tongue thing, like people just say, you know, but like even you know, in the midst of the failures, God is really present. When we were preparing this meeting, the example of Joseph was brought up, and we see it as like Joseph, you know, having a failure and then a success. But there are parts in that book which says, you know, God softened the heart of the guard to take care of Joseph. So that'll be my point. God is always present. Even if you're failing, don't think he's not around, because he most definitely is.
Thanks, Mike. All right, babe.
I would just I don't know how many times I've said this. I feel like I might have really said it a lot, but I'm gonna reiterate that like we need to be vulnerable with God. Like God will never see us as weak. Like that's the greatest lie of all time. And we need to be willing to sit with our pain, sit with our failure, with God, and in relation to the stories that we tell ourselves, and sit with our assumptions and our beliefs and our fears and insecurities, and speak them out loud to God, and like listen to ourselves as we're speaking them out loud, and pray and pray and pray that God gives us the insight about ourselves that we need, that God can help us to truly know ourselves, and that he can just help us to rewrite like whatever false lies, whatever narrative we have in our heads about like whether it's like whatever it is, whatever insecurity, whatever doubt, like that he can rewrite that with his truth over us, and that we can just like really like become like so confident like in him of our like value, our worth, and like that's it.
All right, Miriam.
Wow. Just so many nice points in the summary. I think my one would definitely be to not in a daunting way, but to accept my weakness, accept that I am weak. I'm human. I am gonna make so many mistakes. They're probably uncountable. And yeah, I'm weak. And then I think the verse comes in, because my strength is made perfect in your weakness. I can't allow his strength to be made perfect if I don't expose my vulnerability, if I don't expose that I am weak, if I don't accept that I can't do this alone. And I feel like failure is so prominent in the times when I believe that I need to do this. What went wrong? Like, how can I fix this? How can I do that? And because of my mind is always working, I'm always trying to fix, I'm always trying to do. But actually, in that moment, no, just accept actually that you're not supposed to do, because you're not in control. And if I always believe that I'm in control of every single situation, every single thing that happens in my life, then I will always experience failure the same way, the same daunting way, because I haven't accepted that actually, you know, I am weak, and you know, Lord, you know, you take this, you know, like I messed up, take it. Or maybe I messed up, and you're already doing something in me. Maybe you're already shaping something in me. So I guess going into every failure, going into every success as well, with this mentality of I'm still weak and it's you, not me. So yeah, keep perfecting and keep strengthening.
My point is basically like very, very, very similar to yours. To me, the main thing I always want to remind myself of when it comes to failure is in Jesus, I am forever successful. Outside of Jesus, I am an absolute failure. It's simple as that. if I hold on to him, no matter what I go through, no matter how low I get, I am successful. In him, I'm successful. That's my identity. That's my truth. That's literally who he has created me to be. Outside of him, even if I'm on 100K salary and I've got everything I want in life and everyone around me is praising me, every part of my life will somehow have an element of corrosion in it. And that is true failure, to be apart from God.
Amen.
Anyway, we love you guys. We thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss failure. We're trying to take on your feedback, so we're trying to make the sessions a bit more compact and a bit more conversational. We try as well, by the way, to take a lot of your questions that you send us on social media and then incorporate them in our discussion every week. But before we go, does anyone have any comment or any question on the topic that we've been discussing?
So I will stop the live stream, the recording. So if anyone wants to ask any question, please